Hello everyone, it's Bianchi aka Year the Collector here, and I'm back with another episode of the One World Under Doom storyline. This video will cover issue number 5 of the main title, written by Ryan North and art by R.B. Silva. This is technically part 47 out of 78 if you're tallying the single issues for this event, but in my channel, this will be episode 15. If you want to know what's been happening up to this point, you can check the playlist at the end of this video. With that being said, let's begin. Issue number 5 throws you right in the action. If you remember, issue 4 was the fight between Dr. Doom and Dormammu. When it looked like Doom was outclassed, he revealed his plan to summon all the heroes who were displaced to the Dark Dimension by Dormammu. Now, there's an all-out brawl versus Dormammu. The X-Men, the Avengers, the Spiders, and some random characters like Brain Drain are giving Dormammu hell. Before I jump into the plot and the breakdowns, one of the things that I like the most about the One World Under Doom storyline is that you can track the public perception of Dr. Doom as every issue comes out. The recap pages have these news clippings. Basically, the Latveria press office releases with a graph of some approval rating of Dr. Doom. Both of those need to be taken with a grain of salt, especially because they come from the Latverian Office of Intelligence. But in the world, this is what the people of the United Latveria are reading. So of course, this would persuade people's opinions of Doom. That's just how propaganda works, right? The messaging creates a narrative that is designed to persuade the views of the target audience into believing the narrative. Then the intended narrative spreads the same messaging to change the public discourse, which eventually changes the perception of the target audience. Whenever anyone has any questions about this narrative, people can point to the official reports from the Latvian Office of Intelligence as evidence, and without any other source of information, there can't be any debate or any arguments that would disprove or oppose this new accepted reality. It's basically the snake that eats its own tail when it comes to the propaganda being put out by Doom's people. But anyway, back to the fight. Dormammu proved to be a formidable force, even holding his own against the combined forces from all the heroes. However, Doom started to instruct the heroes to coordinate their attack, starting by telling the Scarlet Witch to close the portals Dormammu had opened to the Dark Dimension. Wanda was hesitant, but Captain Marvel gave her the green light to follow Doom's lead. The idea was to cut off Dormammu's connection to his dimension with the hopes this would weaken him. Before you say, whoa, why would Wanda trust Victor Von Doom? Well, he put that on his mother's soul. If you know anything about Dr. Doom the person, he is a mama's boy. There's a list of stories that explore this aspect of Dr. Doom, the tragedy that shaped his worldviews and the motivations of the character to save his mother. Take The Thing Volume 3, issue number 5 from 2022, for example. In this issue, Dr. Doom revealed to Ben Grimm that his mother sold her soul to the devil named Mephisto in exchange for becoming a powerful sorceress. When she died, her soul was banished to hell, of course. Victor, however, would not accept this, so he made a pact with the Sorcerer Supreme to help Doom with the rescue efforts of his mother. Doom's mother was rescued from Mephisto's control in hell, but she refused to be brought back to life, so death itself took her away. This is just one example that goes to show how severe and intense Doom takes the subject of his mother. He will go to hell and face Mephisto himself for his mama. So when Wanda heard Doom swear on his mother's soul when he asked the Scarlet Witch to follow his lead to defeat Dormammu, he really meant it and she believed it. Dormammu, on the other hand, was taunting the heroes for working for Doom. Of course, Captain America and Iron Man refused this characterization of what was happening. They weren't working for Doom. Their interests were momentarily aligned, rather. Dormammu being defeated and sent back to the Dark Dimension was the beginning and the end of those aligned interests, of course. While they kept Dormammu busy, Doctor Doom recovered the Eye of Agamotto and summoned his armor to regain his full strength. Well, full Sorcerer Supreme magical strength only, because as he stated, his body was wrecked from fighting Dormammu alone. With Dormammu disconnected from his dimension and weakened from the constant assault from the Avengers and the X-Men and everyone else, Doom summoned all his strength and finally he vanquished Dormammu away from Earth in one thunderous sweep of magic. There it was. Dormammu was gone, but everyone was still standing with their guard up, wondering what's gonna happen next. Carol Danvers asked what happened to Dormammu. As you can imagine, they all wondered what if Doom killed him. But no, Doom just vanished the demon back to his dimension to be held forever by spells of his own design. But one that questioned the validity of that statement, because there is no forever magic. All magic requires sacrifice or an exchange. If you read Marvel comics before, especially stories that involve magic users, you've probably heard this before. Magic is an exchange. So, one that's concerned comes from that understanding. What exactly did Doom exchange to keep Dormammu chained up for all of eternity? Doom was straight with his answer since they just fought on the same side, but the fact that he was honest did not change how insidious his answer was. Doom said that the spells that are binding Dormammu in his dimension are tied to a specific circumstance on planet Earth. The chains will hold Dormammu as long as Sorcerer Supreme Doctor Doom is ruler of Earth. So imagine how precarious this situation becomes from this point forward. Even if the Avengers want to and find a way to remove Doctor Doom from power, they must account for the imminent return of Dormammu, which, let me remind you, they could not defeat without Doctor Doom. Remember, in the end of issue 3, the first thing Dormammu did when he invaded Earth's dimension was to remove all the heroes in the blink of an eye. Because of Doctor Doom's neglect of the office of the Sorcerer Supreme, he failed to maintain the spells that kept threats like Dormammu away. By all intents and purposes, the world relies on Doctor Doom for better or for worse. The rest of this issue is not focused on action or magical conflicts. Instead, it's focused in a conflict of a moral dilemma. Let me explain. First, you have the United Latveria News Network doing what they do best, putting a spin on the event of Dormammu's invasion. Their take and the way they frame the conversation is that the heroes of Earth disappear, as if they just up and left the people of the world to fend for themselves, all except for Doom, who decided to stay back and fight. That's how they're putting it, but that is not exactly true, is it? Then they open the discussion for a debate, as you see in all of these types of political commentary shows. One group is in favor and the other is against, and since this is the Latverian network, the people talking in favor of Doom's agenda are very articulate, they come across as reasonable and relatable, and they make some very persuasive arguments in favor of Doctor Doom, versus the people chosen to come on the show and make the arguments against Doom are not as neatly dressed, they speak sarcastically, and come across as bitter while making no real arguments against Doom's agenda. I wanted to point that out because that scene is portrayed in that manner specifically on purpose. Just like when you see this type of shows, they don't always bring the best speakers for both arguments on a debate because at the end of the day, they don't have to. While the news are doing a victory lap on behalf of Dr. Doom, the heroes are still on site for the rescue and recovery efforts, moving debris all over to find survivals and all that. Once again, just another event seen by the entire world, another golden opportunity for Doom to make himself look like the savior. Let me remind you, before we continue, the whole reason Dormammu invaded Earth is because of Doom. He failed to do his duty as Sorcerer Supreme because he was too focused on playing politics to make himself emperor of the world. I don't know this for a fact, I just know it to be truth. I believe Doom intentionally let Dormammu invade this dimension. Call it prep time if you want, but Doom seemed mighty prepared to face an enemy of such scale. That's just my take. Moving on, while the heroes continue to search for survivors, the moral dilemma became the topic of discussion. The thesis of this episode is doubt. Simple as that. The world's doubt on the Avengers have been cemented for a while now, but the doubt of the Avengers in themselves is setting in now after Dormammu vanished. Maybe they don't understand the role of the Sorcerer Supreme since Stephen Strange is out of world and is not here to explain it himself, so everybody is aware why this is Dr. Doom's fault, and thus they don't realize that it's Doom's fault they had to fight Dormammu in the first place. Brain Drain and Squirrel Girl were stating everything they knew to be working better or just working at all since Doom took over as ruler of the world. Things that have been successful like universal healthcare for all, free education, food security, and even things that we take for granted like the public transportation being on time, like trains and such. Results are undeniable. Even Reed Richards looked into some of these policies and initiatives, found them legitimate. So how do they condemn Doom while at the same time they acknowledge that there is some good that people of the world have been benefiting from? Once Invisible Woman did one last sweep of the rubble and debris, Thor stepped in the conversation to present an alternate point of view, the perspective from a god, a ruler of his own people, but also the son of a former ruler. Could the heroes consider that maybe Doom is what's best for the world? Thor presents an entire argument to the rest of the heroes by comparing Doom to his father, the All-Father, Odin. Yeah, because why not? I understand the Emperor/King comparison, especially when you know that Odin was no benevolent ruler. He's done more than a few questionable things, maybe some even outright evil. But he demanded respect from mortals and gods alike, and he received it. Because at the end of the day, no one wanted to cross the All-Father. But the difference here, in my opinion, is that Odin didn't cause the problems he later pretended to solve. Not all of them, at least. Thor asked for the Avengers, specifically for Tony Stark, to listen and consider his words. Maybe Odin's way of ruling would not work on Earth with democracy and all, but Thor could not ignore the fact that Doom had turned Earth around in merely weeks. Why are the Avengers still refusing to change their stand against Doom? Listen, I know that Tony Stark is not everyone's favorite person, but he is the only one here that is not swayed by Doom's performances. His answer to Thor's thought experiment came across as frantic, and they even called him a conspiracy theorist. He questioned if Doom planned this whole invasion, and Carol said, "Oh, so you think Doom planned to break every bone in his body?" And Tony was like, yeah, he's already healing magically for all we know. The point he was making, in a very frantic state, to be honest, was that this was Doom who they were talking about. He wanted everyone to keep in mind that he's a bad guy at the end of the day. Tony was not going to be persuaded by a few good deeds to completely change his perception of who Doom was, is, or will be in the future. Thor, however, posed a final question to the Avengers that left most of them speechless. Do they really have the luxury and the moral high ground to ignore the prosperity Doom has brought to Earth just because they don't like the man? But that's when Maria Hill showed up and answered the question for everyone. They don't have to ignore anything. She has some intel on Doctor Doom that will change this story going forward. If you don't know who this is and why her words carry any weight or credibility, let me put you on some game. Maria Hill debuted back in the New Avengers Volume 1 in issue 4 from 2005. She comes from the Brian Michael Bendis heyday in Marvel Comics. Maria Hill used to be the director of S.H.I.E.L.D. for the longest time. She didn't play games back then, and she still doesn't to this day. When she first arrived to the scene, she fell into the position after Nick Fury's disappearance, and she came across as a party pooper for the New Avengers back then. She was all business. She never indulged Tony Stark's humor or anybody else for that matter, and she was just as capable as Nick Fury. Depending on the era and run you see her appearing, Maria Hill is top 3 or top 5 spy in the entire world. So when she's saying she knows why the heroes keep losing to Doom and that he's hiding something big, they all stop and listen. And that's where issue 5 ended. Here's my final thoughts on issue 5 of One World Under Doom. This whole arc is one giant propaganda thought exercise. It doesn't matter that Doom has done things that benefit people, he's also doing many things that are detrimental to the people as well. Just ask the people of Shelbyville. Is anyone in that town getting that free universal healthcare that Squirrel Girl praised so much? Same goes for Brain Drain's statement, is the train on time in Shelbyville? Would you call Shelbyville prosperous, Mr. Mighty Thor? What about the Fantastic Four? Did the Thing ask to be turned into a human? Or how about the original Thunderbolts becoming the full guard victories, essentially a secret police to work directly under Doctor Doom to stop any opposition or discourse against his empire? What about the kidnapping and torture of John Walker and Bucky Barnes in Doomstat? Was that free healthcare they were getting in the dungeons of the castle? I'm sure there are many other examples of Doom's treachery in all the other tie-ins that contextualize all of Doom's actions, not just the good ones, not just the good deeds he's done here and there. We can't ignore the bad because of the good, especially the bad that happens to others at the expense of the good that happens to you. It's wrong, it's immoral and selfish. I think at that point, you just lost the plot. But that's the video, everyone. Let me know your thoughts on the One World Under Doom story in the comments, and stay around for the references on this video just in case you want to look into these breakdowns on your own time. Thanks for watching, have a blessed day, and remember to read more comics.